long before the world became modern. In the heart of ancient Edo land, there stood a mighty kingdom, surrounded by thick forests, tall walls carved with symbols of power. The kingdom was ruled by a wise but strict Oba, whose word was law and whose throne had stood for generations. Among all his children, one stood out, Prince Eghosa, the crown prince and heir to the throne. Prince Eghosa was not just royal by birth, he was royal in spirit, tall and broad-shouldered, with eyes that carried both fire and compassion. He was known as the Lion of Edo. From a young age, he trained with warriors, learned the sacred traditions of the ancestors, and mastered the art of war. Wherever danger threatened Edo land, Prince Eghosa stood at the front. The people loved him, but they also feared the laws of the land, laws that had existed long before he was born. The law of the orphans. One of the harshest laws in Edo land concerned orphans. It was believed that children who lost both parents carried misfortune. The elders claimed such children attracted bad spirits and imbalance. As a result, orphans were forced to live outside the village boundary, close to forests where wild animals roamed. They were forbidden from owning land in the village, forbidden from marrying into noble families, and forbidden from holding any position of honor. Many were treated cruelly, mocked, and forgotten. Among these forgotten souls was a young woman named Itohan. Itohan, the girl at the boundary. Itohan lost her parents when she was very young. Her father, a humble hunter, was killed by a wild animal, and her mother died shortly after from grief and illness. With no relatives willing to challenge tradition. Itohan was taken to the village boundary and left there with nothing but a small clay pot and torn clothes. Years passed. Itohan grew into a woman of rare beauty. Smooth dark skin, gentle eyes, and a smile that could soften even the hardest heart. But her beauty did not protect her from suffering. She lived alone in a small mud hut, fetching water from a distant stream, gathering firewood, and surviving on whatever kindness the earth offered. Despite her pain, Itohan never allowed bitterness to enter her heart. When travelers passed by, she offered water. When children strayed near the boundary, she guided them back safely at night. She prayed to the ancestors, not for wealth or revenge, but for peace. The war that shook the kingdom. One season, rumors spread that the neighboring kingdom planned to invade Edo land. Soon, the rumors became reality. Enemy warriors crossed the borders, burning villages and capturing land. The Oba summoned his chiefs and warriors. Only one man can lead this battle, the Oba declared. My son, Prince Eghosa. The prince knelt before his father. For Edo land, I will fight with my life. The war was long and brutal. Swords clashed, arrows darkened the sky, and the earth drank blood. Prince Eghosa fought like a spirit sent by the ancestors, cutting through enemy lines and leading his men with fearless strength. In the end, Edo emerged victorious. But victory came at a cost. The prince's fall. On the journey back to the palace, the warriors were ambushed by remnants of the enemy who refused to accept defeat. In the chaos, Prince Eghosa was struck by a poisoned blade. Though he fought them off, the poison weakened him. Separated from his men, Bleeding and dizzy, the prince wandered alone as night fell. His strength failed him, and his vision blurred. Finally, he collapsed near the boundary of the village, where no noble ever wished to be, where no noble ever wished to be found. The kindness of an orphan. A small lamp flickered in the darkness. Itohan had heard a groan outside her hut. Fear gripped her heart, but compassion pushed her forward. Stepping outside, she saw a wounded man lying on the ground, dressed in fine warrior cloth but barely conscious. Without asking questions, Itohan dragged him into her hut. She fetched water, cleaned his wounds, and used herbs passed down from her mother. She gave him water to drink and fed him the little food she had saved. She tore part of her cloth to bandage his injuries. That night, the prince slept on her mat while Itohan sat awake, fanning him and whispering prayers. She did not know he was a prince. She only knew he was a human being in need. A night that changed destiny. By morning, Prince Eghosa awoke stronger. He looked around the small hut in disbelief. "Why would you help a stranger?" he asked weakly. Itohan smiled softly. "Because the ancestors teach us that kindness is never wasted." They spoke for hours. The prince learned of Itohan's life as an orphan, her banishment, her loneliness. Itohan learned that the man she saved was a warrior returning from war, but still did not know he was royalty. Something stirred in the prince's heart, something deeper than gratitude. When royal guards finally found him, they fell to their knees in shock. "Crown Prince." Itohan froze in fear, dropping to the ground. "I did not know." Prince Eghosa lifted her gently. "You saved my life. From today, no one will ever harm you." The prince's choice. Back at the palace, healers treated the prince, but his heart remained with the girl at the boundary. Day and night he thought of Itohan, her kindness, her strength, her dignity despite suffering. Finally, Prince Eghosa stood before his father. "I wish to marry Itohan." The palace exploded with outrage. "She is an orphan. She lives outside the boundary. It has never been done." But the prince did not move. "She saved my life when the law abandoned her. If such a woman is unworthy of royalty, then our laws are broken." The law is broken and rebuilt. The Oba retreated into deep reflection. He consulted the elders, the priests, and the spirits. After many days, he returned to the throne. From this day forward, the Oba declared, "The law that condemns orphans is abolished. No child will be punished for loss. Orphans shall live among us, marry among us, and be protected by the crown." The people wept. Itohan was brought into the palace, dressed in coral beads and royal cloth. She married Prince Eghosa in the grandest ceremony Edo land had ever seen. She became Queen Itohan, the first orphan to marry a prince, the woman whose kindness rewrote history, the legacy of love. Queen Itohan ruled beside her husband with wisdom and compassion. She built homes for orphans, ensured education for the forgotten, and reminded the kingdom that humanity was greater than fear. And so Edoland prospered, not just in strength, but in mercy. Because one prince was wounded, one orphan showed kindness, and love changed the kingdom forever. This story teaches us that true greatness is not measured by power, wealth, or social status, but by kindness, compassion, and courage to do what is right. Itohan, though rejected by society and pushed to the edge of the village, showed a pure heart by helping a wounded stranger without expecting any reward. Her kindness saved a life and changed the destiny of a whole kingdom. This reminds us that goodness can come from the most unexpected places. The story also teaches that unjust traditions should never be protected simply because they are old. The law that forced orphans to live outside the village caused pain and suffering. Yet people followed it without question. Prince Eghosa's courage to challenge this law shows that leadership means standing up for the oppressed, even when it is unpopular. Another lesson is that love has the power to heal, unite, and transform society. The prince's love for Itohan was not based on her background but on her character. Through love, a cruel law was abolished and dignity was restored to the forgotten. Finally, the story teaches us to treat every human being with respect, because anyone we look down on today may be the one who saves us tomorrow.